I'm joined today by Bobby Thompson, the Chair of the Board of Governors of Ballyclare Nursery School. Bobby has very kindly agreed to answer some questions about the school's ethos and to reflect on his role in supporting a strong school ethos. So Bobby, tell us a little about your background and how long you've been a governor at Ballyclare Nursery School.
Well, thank you. I've been a governor in Ballyclare Nursery School since 2007, and I became chair in 2010. But I have other experience in other schools. I sit on the Board of Governors of two large post-primary schools, and I'm also on the governing body of Stranmillis University College. So I spent my entire life, the last 50 odd years have been in education, and mostly all teaching in the primary sector. So I started off teaching in a smallish village school, and then I ended up spent the last 32 years of my teaching career as head of that particular school, which is literally 2 miles away from Ballyclare Nursery School. So I know my two daughters went to Ballyclare Nursery School many years ago. I won't tell you how many years ago in case they ever hear this interview, but they both went to Ballyclare Nursery School. In fact, I've known the school since it was actually created in the town of Ballyclare, which is where I now live. I'm originally from Belfast, but I'm now a country bumpkin, as they say. So all my experience has been in education, and I know the system reasonably well.
Great. So you are in the unique position of having sat at both sides of the table, having been a principal and now chair of the Board of Governors of more than one school, nursery and also post-primary. So tell me a bit, as a chair of the Board of Governors at Ballyclare Nursery School and potentially drawing on your experience at the other schools, what role do you play in setting the ethos of the school?
To be perfectly honest, Tracey, in probably all schools, unless it's a brand new school, the ethos will always be in place before someone takes up the role of chair. So quite often the chair really isn't involved in creating the ethos of the school. But it's most important that when someone is appointed chair, that they're content with the ethos, as should be the Board of Governors. And that then is the opportunity, along with the principal, to look at the ethos and see whether it needs strengthened, to see if it's doing the job that's saying that it's doing. Because the ethos of the school should reflect the needs of the children in the school and provide the necessary education for all the pupils. So it's important that the chair and governors are fully aware of the ethos and have an opportunity to tweak. But it would be most unusual for the chair of governors to create the ethos. Maybe that's not a bad thing, because it has to be a collaborative thing. One person cannot create the ethos of the school. It's up to the school, it's up to the teachers in the school and the staff in the school, along with the governors, obviously, to create the appropriate ethos. But if the ethos isn't appropriate, then it's up to the chair to step in and say, look, we need to look at this and to make changes where necessary, but with ownership of all in the school. It's important. This word ownership is cropping up all the time, but in this case, it's very important. The ethos of the school is fundamental in what the school provides, and we have to provide the appropriate curriculum for our pupils. Sorry if I witter on a little bit, please.
Not at all. And, you know, you've mentioned some key relationships in supporting a school ethos. You've mentioned the staff, the role of the principal. So tell me a bit more about the key relationships that you have as chair of the Board of Governors and how you go about nurturing these relationships in your role.
Well, obviously the chair and the governors need a very strong relationship between themselves, because at the end of the day, they're responsible for the governance of the school. But in my experience, it is vital that the chair and the principal have a very strong relationship. Now, I don't mean that they agree on every topic and that they agree on everything that's happening in the school, but they should be meeting on a regular basis, not just at Board of Governor meetings, but they should be meeting at other occasions to look at areas that are arising, to look at what difficulties there may be, to look at what problems there are possibly forming, the chair and the principal need to be working very closely together. And to me, that's the most important relationship in a Board of Governors. They don't have to get on and they don't have to agree on everything, but they have to work together for the benefit of the pupils in the school. And you'd probably hear me at the point of boredom mentioning pupils in the school, because all too often we talk about schools, we talk about systems, and we don't mention children. That's our business, is the welfare of the children in the school and providing the broad and balanced curriculum to meet every need. And I think the chair and the principal need to work very closely together in all areas of this.
Thanks, Bobby. You mentioned that schools can face challenge and that it's important that principals and the chair of the Board of Governors have a good relationship that allow them to see any challenges that are coming their way. How do you think that a strong school ethos can protect against such challenges?
Well, there will always be challenges, but the ethos of the school could make those challenges more easily, what's the word I'm searching for? All challenges are difficult, but if the ethos is appropriate, we can approach these challenges in a much more concrete way. But the stage we're at the moment in society at the moment, in schools in this country, in schools around the world, we're meeting unprecedented challenges. And we've got to provide things we never thought we'd have to provide before. And we've got to work more closely together than ever. And we're looking at staffing shortages at the moment. We're looking at children and remote learning. We're looking at examinations. These challenges are unprecedented. And sometimes the ethos of the school may not have been created to meet all these challenges. So this is where ethos might have to be tweaked.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that, the current pandemic has, caused a lot of disruption and challenges for schools. So how has the school managed to sustain its support for the wider community, that is seen as such a strong part of its ethos?
I think you'll find that parents will always tell you this. And the way parents react to what is happening in the school and to what mitigation schools have had to put into place. And our parents certainly are more than happy with what we have done in Ballyclare Nursery School. But it's also giving new opportunities to our teachers to look at new ways of teaching and new ways of communicating. And remote learning, however unsatisfactory it may be, but it's giving our teaching staff many new skills. But it's also giving our children new skills and parents, because parents are learning from their children. So there are advantages coming out of the pandemic. And just because a child isn't in the school building doesn't mean that child isn't being taught and isn't being taught properly. It's being taught differently, but it's still being taught and it's still being made to feel a part of the whole school ethos. And I think that we are learning from this. I say new styles of pedagogy are being created as we speak, and this can only be a benefit to everyone. But schools are aware of this, and parents are very, very supportive of how schools have managed. Schools just haven't closed during this pandemic. They may not be in, the children may not be in their classrooms, but they're still being taught, and they're still working, and they're still learning, and they're still enjoying that learning. And it's good that there's this variety of learning that's now coming through. And some of that, I think, will last when the pandemic ends.
That's great. Thanks, Bobby. And you mentioned, obviously, you've had a career within education, and following that career in education, you've continued to give back to your community by being a governor. Could you tell me a bit more about what you feel are the values and skills that are essential for your role in supporting all of the schools that you
Well, obviously the authority, education authority, when they're looking for governors, they're now looking for governors with different skills and with particular skills, and that's not a bad thing. It's good to have people with the knowledge of finance and the knowledge of this, that, and the other thing. And it's not essential, but I think it's a very useful skill to have some knowledge of the education system. And if someone has been involved in teaching and learning and can bring that experience with them, that's also a big advantage. It's not essential. We have some excellent chairs who have not been teachers and excellent governors who have not taught, and that's fine. They're bringing different skills. But I certainly would feel that it's a big advantage to have been involved in the educational sector for how many number of years, to bring those skills and that experiences to the school, where you can offer help and advice from a knowledge-based point of view.
Thank you, Bobby. And tell me this, in terms of having been a principal and a governor, what do you feel are the lessons that stay with you when it comes to providing for children?
The most important lesson, I think, is to realise that we have to provide a curriculum. This may sound boring, but it's what has to happen. We have to provide a curriculum which suits every child, because children are not the same. No two children are the same, and no two children respond in the same way. So it's up to the staff, it's up to teachers, with the support and guidance of the Board of Governors, to provide that. And I mentioned a broad and balanced curriculum earlier, but it's an appropriate curriculum. The problem is that sometimes our curriculum is bent and skewed because of particular examinations and tests that have to go on and so forth. But if we're not providing for the needs of our pupils, of our individual pupils, then we're failing. And we're failing them, and we're failing their family, and we're failing society. We have to provide particular needs for particular children, and that's the sign of a good school. A school that can do that and is prepared to bend and change, which you have to, because you're bringing children in on a yearly basis. You're not bringing the same children in with the same abilities, the same outlooks, and so on. And also, we must remember that these children, and going down to nursery level and primary level, and something I've always said and feel strongly about, these are little people. And they come into school and they have feelings, and they've had a bad breakfast, and they've had a row before they came out, and they don't want to be at school that day. We as teachers, with the help of the Board of Governors, have to make sure that we accommodate that, meet all their needs, basically. It's not easy, but it has to be done.
That's great, Bobby, and that's become, clear throughout our conversation. It's about being child-centred, and every child is different, and it's about supporting staff to enable them to meet the individual needs of our children. What more do you think could be done to support staff in that work?
It's very difficult, but every school has its hands tied by budgetary constraints, by political agendas, especially in this country. There's nothing more apparent than this country. So we have outside factors which do not help necessarily, because at the end of the day, we do not want to become a political football. Education that's not what it's there for. We have a role to play, and we need to bring passion back into teaching, passion back into governors who are there for the right reasons. There are governors who are governors because it's good to be seen as a governor of a school. It's good to be seen as on your CV, governor of such and such a school. No, you're there as a governor. Put passion into your role, put your children first, and then things will improve.
That's great, Bobby. You've definitely communicated that passion in our conversation today. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to contribute to our support for governors in leading school ethos, by sharing your experiences at Ballyclare Nursery School and your own background. And I'd like to wish you and everyone at Ballyclare Nursery School all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I digressed, I apologise, but it's a passionate subject. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you very